Hello everyone. So the topic is the security at the application layer. So basically we are going to discuss about the two protocols which provides security services for the email. The first one is the PGP, that is the pretty good privacy, and the second one is secure multipurpose internet mail extension. So moving towards the objectives of this chapter, the first one is we'll see the general structure of an email application program. Next we will we will see like what PGP will provide the security services. Then we'll discuss the same for SMIME, and next we'll see the trust mechanism for both, and in the end we'll see the structure of the messages exchange in the PGP and SMIME. Okay, so let's start with the email system. The topics will be discussed under this will be the architecture and the security. So basically in the next slide we can see the basic scenario in one-way email exchange. So assume that this Alice is working in an organization, okay, that runs an email server, and every employee is connected to the email server through a LAN. Okay, next Alice could be connected to the email server of an ISP through a WAN also. Okay, next Bob is also in one of the above two situations. Now the administrator of the email server at the Alice side has created a queuing system that sends email to the internet one by one. The administrator of the email server at Bob's side has created a mailbox for like every user connected to the server. The mailbox holds the received messages until they are retrieved by the recipient. So when this Alice needs to send a message to Bob, what she will do, she will invoke a user agent called as UA program to prepare the message. She then uses the another program called as the MTA or the message transfer agent to send the message to the mail server at her site. See, MTA is a client server program with the client installed at server's own computer. The Alice own computer, and the server installed at the mail server. So the message received at the mail server at the Alice site is queued with all other messages. Each goes to its corresponding destination. See, in Alice's case, her message goes to the mail server at the Bob site. Any client server MTA is responsible for the email transfer between the two servers. The message arrives at the destination mail server. It is stored in the Bob's mailbox. This is a special file that holds the message until it is retrieved by the Bob. And when the Bob needs to retrieve this message, including the one which has been sent by the Alice, then he invokes another program which is called as the MAA or the message access agent. This MAA is also designed as a client server program with the client installed at the Bob's own computer and the server installed at the mail server. We all know that sending an email is an one-time activity. Like there is no session. Like we used to have an IPsec or an SSL. So we will discuss the cryptographic algorithms in the certificates and the cryptographic secrets that we are using in place of these. So first is the cryptographic algorithms. So see, when there is no session or no handshaking to negotiate the algorithms for encryption or for hashing, then how can the receiver know which algorithm the sender has chosen? So for this problem, there's one solution. Which is to select one algorithm for each cryptographic operation and force the Alice to use only one algorithm. Okay, one of those algorithm. This solution is very restrictive, as we can see, and it is very limited. So we will move to a better solution, which define a set of algorithms for each operation that the user use in his or her system. Like can include the name, or you can see the identifier of the algorithm she has used in the email. Okay, for example, like if this Alice can choose MD5 for hashing, or triple DES for the encryption or the decryption purposes. Okay, when Alice sends a message to Bob, she sends the corresponding identifiers for triple DES and MD5 in her message. Okay, now Bob receives this message and extracts the identifiers first. He then knows which algorithm to use for decryption, and which can be used for the hashing. Next is the certificates. It is obvious that some public key algorithms must be used for email security. Okay, like we have example where we need to encrypt the secret key or sign the message. So to encrypt the secret key, this Alice needs Bob's public key. Okay, so to verify the signed message, and Bob needs Alice public key. So each email security protocol has a different method of this certifying keys. Now the same problem for the cryptographic algorithms applies to the cryptographic secrets, or we call as the keys. Like if there is no negotiation, how can the two parties establish the secrets between themselves? Like Alice and Bob could use asymmetric key algorithms for authentication and encryption, which do not require the establishment of a symmetric key. Okay, however, the use of asymmetric key algorithms is very inefficient for the encryption decryption for a very long message. Like most email security protocols today require that the encryption and the decryption be done using a symmetric key algorithm and a one-time secret key sent with a message. Now Alice can create a secret key and send it with the message she sends to Bob. Okay, to protect the secret key from interception by Eve, or you can say the third party, the secret key is encrypted with the Bob's public key. In other words, we can say the secret key itself is encrypted. Next is PGP. So PGP was basically invented to provide email with privacy, integrity and authentication. Okay, it can be used to create a secure email message or to store a file securely for a future retrieval. So these are the topics which we will discuss. The first one is the scenarios. So we will move from simple scenarios to the complex one. We will take the first one. We can see the picture, which is the plain text. This is the simplest scenario where a message is sent in plain text. Okay, so there is no message integrity or any confidentiality in this scenario. Now the Alice, which is the sender, composes a message and sends it to Bob, this the receiver. The message is stored in Bob's mailbox until it is retrieved by him. Okay, next scenario is the message integrity. So moving to an improvement is that Alice will sign the message. Okay, like Alice creates a digest of the message and signs it, and with its private key. Now when Bob receives this message, he verifies the message by using the public this Alice public key. So two keys are needed for this scenario. First one is the Alice private key, and next is Bob needs to know the Alice public key. And the third one is the compression. This is a further improvement to actually compress the message and the digest to make the packet more compact. So this improvement has no security benefit, but it eases the traffic. Okay, so next is confidentiality with one-time session key. So confidentiality in an email system can be achieved using conventional encryption with one-time session key. Alice can create a session key, then use the session key to encrypt the message and the digest, and then send the key itself with the message. Okay. However, to protect this session key, Alice encrypts it with Bob's public key. Okay, so when Bob receives a packet, he first decrypts the key using this private key to remove the key. Okay, then he uses the session key to decrypt the rest of the message. After decompressing the rest of the message, Bob creates a digest of the message and checks if it is equal to the digest which has been sent by Alice. If it is, then the message is authenticate. This is another service which is provided by PGP. See, most email system allows the message to consist of only the ASCII characters. So to translate other characters which are not in ASCII set, PGP uses Radix 64 conversion. Now each character to be sent after the encryption is converted to Radix 64 code. Yeah. So next is segmentation. So PGP allows segmentation of message after it has been converted to Radix 64 to make each transmitted unit the uniform size as allowed by the underlying email protocol. Next is key rings. We usually assume that Alice needs to send a message only to Bob. But it is not always the case. Alice may need to send messages to many people, so therefore she needs key rings. In this case, Alice needs a ring of public keys with a key belonging to each person with whom Alice needs to correspond, like send or receive messages. In addition, the PGP designers designed a ring of private public keys. One reason that Alice may wish to change her key, the pair of keys from time to time. Another reason is that Alice may need to correspond with different groups of people, like the friends, the colleagues, and so on. Alice may wish to use a different key pair for each group. Therefore, each user needs to have two sets of rings, a ring of private public keys and a ring of public keys of other people. So in this figure we can see there's a community of 4 people, each having a ring of pairs of private and public keys, and at the same time a ring of public keys belonging to the other people in the community. The PGP algorithms that are used in PGP are listed in the next few slides. First, in table 16.1 we can see that these are the public key algorithms that are used for signing the digest or encrypting the messages. Next is the symmetric key algorithm. These we can see in the table 16.2 that the symmetric key algorithms that are used for conventional encrypting. Next is the hash algorithms. So the hash algorithms that are used for creating hashes in PGP, they are listed in table 16.3. Next are the algorithms called as the compressed algorithms that are used for compressing text as shown in the table 16.4. Next topic is PGP certificates. PGP, like any other protocols, uses certificates to authenticate public keys. However, the process is totally different. First is X.509 certificates. Protocols that use X.509 certificates depend on the hierarchical structure of this trust. There is a predefined change of trust from the root to any certificate. Even user fully trusts the authority of a CA at the root level. The root issues certificates for the CAs at the second level. A second level CA issues a certificate for the third level, and so on. Next is the PGP certificates. In PGP, there is no need of CAs. Anyone in the ring can sign a certificate for anyone else in the ring. Bob can sign a certificate for Ted, John, Ann, and so on. There is no hierarchy of trust in PGP. There is no tree. The lack of hierarchical structure. There is a lack of an hierarchical structure. The entire operation of the PGP is based on trust, certificate trust, and the legitimacy of the public keys. Now we will see the key ring tables. Each user, such as in Alice, keeps track of two key rings, one private key ring and one public key ring. So PGP defines a structure for each of these key rings in the form of a table, as we can see in figure 16.7. So this shows a format of a private key ring table where we have a user ID, a key ID, a public key, an encrypted private key, and a timestamp. The user ID is usually an email address of the user. The key ID is a column which uniquely defines a public key. Public key, this column just lists the public key belonging to a particular private key or any of the public key pair. Encrypted private key, this column shows the encrypted value of the private key in the private key or public key pair. Next, timestamp, this column holds the date and the time of the key pair creation. Now we will see an example where a private key ring table for Alice is given. We assume that Alice has only two user IDs like alice@sum.com and alice@anet.net. We also assume that Alice had two sets of private public keys, one for each user ID. Now the table 16.5 shows the private key ring table for Alice. Note that although the values of ID, key ID, public key, and the private key are shown in hexadecimal, this time format is used for timestamp. These formats are only for representation and may be different in any actual implementation. So the public key ring table is shown in figure 16.8. There is an user ID, as in the private key ring table. The user ID is usually the email address of the entity. Key ID, as in the private key ring table, the key ID is the first at least 64 bits of the public key. Public key, this is the public key of the entity. Producer trust, this column defines the producer level of trust. In most implementations, it can only be one of the three values: none, partial, or full. Certificates, this column holds the certificate or certificates signed by other entities for this entity. A user ID may have more than one certificate. Certificate trust, this column represents the certificate trust or trust. If Anne sends a certificate for John, PGP searches the row entry for Anne, finds the value of the producer trust for Anne, copies that value, and inserts it in the certificate trust field in the entry for John. Next is key legitimacy. This value is calculated by PGP based on the value of certificate trust and the predefined weight for each certificate trust. Next is timestamp. This column holds the date and time of the column creation. In the next example, 16.2, we can see a series of steps that will show how a public key ring table is formed. So first, start with the row Alice herself as shown in table 16.6. Use N non, P partial, and F full for the level of trust. For simplicity, also assume that everyone, including Alice, has only one user ID. Note that based on this table, we assume that Alice has issued a certificate for herself implicitly. Alice, of course, trusts herself fully. Okay, the producer level of trust is also full, and so is the key legitimacy. Although Alice never uses this row first, it is needed for the operation of PGP. Second, now Alice adds Bob to the table.
Alice fully trusts Bob, but to obtain the public key, she asks Bob to send the public key by email as well as his fingerprint. Alice then calls Bob to check the fingerprint. Table 16.7 shows this new event. Note that the value of producer trust is full for Bob because Alice fully trusts Bob. The value of the certificate field is empty, which shows that this key has been received indirectly and not by a certificate. Third, now Alice adds Ted to the table. Ted is fully trusted. However, for this particular user, Alice does not have to call Ted. Instead, Bob, who knows Ted's public key, sends Alice a certificate that includes Ted's public key, which is shown in table 16.8. Note that the value of certificate field shows that the certificate was received by Bob. The value of the certificate trust is copied by PGP from Bob's producer trust field. The value of the key legitimacy field is the value of the certificate trust multiplied by 1. This is the weight. Fourth, now Alice adds Anne to the list. Alice partially trusts Anne, but Bob, who is fully trusted, sends a certificate for Anne. Table 16.9 shows the new event. Okay, in table 16.9, when Anne is added to the table. Now, note that the producer trust value for Anne is partial, but the certificate trust and key legitimacy is full. Now, the fifth point is, now Anne introduces John, who is not trusted by Alice. Table 16.10 shows this new event. Now, table 16.10, after John is added to the table, note that PGP has copied the value of Anne's producer trust P to the certificate trust field for John. The value of key legitimacy field for John is 1 by 2 of P at this moment, which means Alice must not use John's key until it changes to 1, that is F. Now, Janet, who is unknown to Alice, sends a certificate for Lee. Alice totally ignores this certificate because she does not know Janet. Now, Ted sends a certificate for John. John, who is trusted by Test, has probably asked Ted to send the certificate. Alice looks at the table and finds John's user ID with the corresponding key ID and the public key. Alice does not add another row to the table, she just modifies the table as shown in the figure as in the table 16.11. Because John has two certificates in Alice table and his key legitimacy value is 1, Alice can use his key, but John is still untrustworthy. Note that Alice can continue to add entries to the table. So table 16.11 shows after one more certificate is received from John. Next topic is the trust model in PGP. We can create a trust model for any user in a ring with the user as the center of activity. Such a model can look like the one as shown in figure 16.9. The figure shows the trust model for Alice at some moment. The diagram may change with any changes in the public key ring table. Figure 16.9 shows that there are three entities in the Alice ring with full trust: Alice herself, Bob and Ted. The figure also shows three entities with partial trust: Anne, Mark and Bruce. Also, there are 6 entities with no trust, 9 entities with a legitimate key. Alice can encrypt a message to any one of these entities or verify a signature received from one of these entities. Alice key is never used in this model. There are also 3 entities that do not have any legitimate keys with Alice. Now Bob, Anne and Mark have made their keys legitimate by sending their keys by email and verifying their fingerprints by phone. Helen, on the other hand, has sent a certificate from a CA because she is not trusted by Alice and verification on the phone is not possible. Although Ted is fully trusted, he has given Alice a certificate signed by Bob. John has sent Alice two certificates, one signed by Ted and one by Anne. Kevin has also sent two certificates to Alice, one signed by Anne and one by Mark. Each of these certificates gives Kevin half a point of legitimacy. Therefore, Kevin's key is legitimate. Duke has sent two certificates to Alice, one signed by Mark and the other by Helen. Since Mark is half trusted and Helen is not trusted, Duke does not have a legitimate key. Jenny has sent four certificates, one signed by half trusted entity and two by untrusted entities and one by unknown entity. Jenny does not have enough points to make her key legitimate. Lois has sent one certificate signed by unknown entity. Note that Alice may keep Lois' name in the table in case future certificates for Lois arrive. Next is key revocation. It may become necessary for an entity to revoke his or her public key from the key. This may happen if the owner of the key feels that the key is compromised, that is like stolen for example, or just too old to be safe. To revoke a key, the owner can send a revocation certificate signed by herself. The revocation certificate must be signed by the old key and disseminated to all the people in the ring that use that public key. Next topic is extracting information from rings. The sender and the receiver each have two key rings, one private and one public. Now let us see how information needed for sending and receiving a message is extracted from these rings. First is sender side. Assume that Alice is sending an email to Bob. Alice needs 5 pieces of information. They are: first, the key ID of the public key she is using. Second, her private key. Third, the session key. Fourth, the Bob's public key ID. And fifth, the Bob's public key. To obtain these 5 pieces of information, Alice needs to feed 4 pieces of information to PGP. Her user ID for her email. Second, her passphrase. Next, a sequence of keystrokes with possible pauses. Okay, and Bob's user ID. So Alice public key ID which is to be sent with the message, and her private key which is to sign the message, are stored in a private key ring table. Alice selects the user ID, her email ID, that she wants to use as an index to this ring. PGP extracts the key ID and the encrypted private key. PGP uses predefined decryption algorithms and her hashed passphrase as the key to decrypt this private key. Alice also needs a secret session key. The session key in the PGP is a random number with a size defined in the encryption-decryption algorithm. PGP uses a random number generator to create a random session key. The seed is a set of arbitrary keystrokes typed by Alice on a keyboard. Each keystroke is converted to 8 bits and each pause between the keystrokes is converted to 32 bits. The combination goes through a complex random number generator to create a very reliable random number as session key. Note that the session key in PGP is a one-time random key and used only once. Alice also needs Bob's key ID, which is to be sent with a message, and Bob's public key to encrypt the session key. These 2 pieces of information are extracted from the public key ring table using Bob's user ID, that is his email. Now at the receiver side, Bob needs 3 pieces of information: Bob's public key to decrypt the session key, second the session key to decrypt the data, and third Alice public key to verify the signature. We can see this in figure 16.11. Now Bob uses the key ID of this public key sent by Alice to find his corresponding private key needed to decrypt the session key. This piece of information can be extracted from Bob's private key ring table. The private key, however, is encrypted when stored. Bob needs to use this passphrase and the hash function to decrypt it. The encrypted session key is sent with a message. Bob uses his decrypted private key to decrypt the session key. Bob uses Alice key ID sent with a message to extract Alice public key, which is stored in Bob's public keyring table.